Hey there, powerful soul. Casandra Austin McDonald back for another feminine leadership conversation. And today we're going to have a discussion about this concept of persecution wounds and how alchemizing persecution wounds can support you as a feminine leader to overcome this fear of being seen. Many accomplished spiritual women, modern day feminine, high achieving women have this unconscious and cellular fear within their beings of being seen on platforms, being seen on stages, being seen for their brilliance, their genius, their talents, their gifts, their abilities, their successes, their achievements, their accolades. I could keep going on and on and on and on and on. The bottom line is that many accomplished spiritual, feminine, high achieving women who are looking to fulfill a mission on this planet, looking to experience next levels of success, looking to ascend to a higher level in their impact and visibility, often come against these fears of being seen and often come against what is known as persecution wounds. And so we're going to have a conversation about this because I believe you are listening to the sound of my voice and you're watching this because you are the type of woman who knows that you came here to create everything you've ever wanted in this lifetime, in your life, in your love, in your leadership, to experience the intimacy, the impact, and the income that you crave. And it requires deeper conversations like this. It requires you to go deeper. Sometimes when you are on this level that you've accomplished so many great things, you've achieved so many great things, and you feel that hunger in your belly brewing that there's more. You know what I'm talking about? You ever felt that yearning, that churning, that hunger inside? There's more. There's more available for me. There's another level with my name on it. You're going to be interested in having this discussion today. So what are persecution wounds? They are this deep, unconscious, and cellular fear that you will die, that you will be publicly humiliated or hunted or attacked, that you will be persecuted for being seen, for speaking out or for against something that may not be status quo, for being publicly seen in a way that is showcasing your genius, your brilliance, your beauty, your successes, even your wealth, for public speaking that's not a popular opinion. Now, when these fears surface, oftentimes there is this deep feeling inside of, am I too much? Am I too much? Am I being too much? Am I doing too much? Is this too much? There's this fear of too muchness that tends to surface. And I love to say inside of my work that I believe it's the too much women that actually change the world. And so I believe that we get to reclaim being too much. We get to reclaim what it means to be too much women in this modern era and own it. Embrace it. Wear it like a badge of honor, if you will, so that you can overcome this unconscious crippling belief that may be sabotaging you in your leadership, that may be sabotaging you from experiencing greater levels of impact, visibility in your mission, in your business, in your leadership, in whatever the work you've been called and created to do in this lifetime. Now, it can also mean that you have this concern. What if I'm not enough? What if I'm not good enough? What if the work that I'm doing is not good enough? What if my message is not good enough? What if when I click the button to do the video, it's not good enough? What if I stand on stage to give this talk and this message is not good enough? What if I go inside of this meeting to share what my thoughts are and the approach I believe is best, or the angle that I think we should take inside of this organization or inside of this company or inside of this agency isn't good enough? There's this not good enough that surfaces. And it sometimes is not always a conscious thought. It's usually a feeling first. And this is why having a heightened level of awareness of not just the thoughts that we're thinking, but also the feelings that we're feeling is imperative for being really powerful, impactful feminine leaders. Now, the next part is when you notice that there are these fears showing up of being seen, of public speaking or stepping into your full self publicly, being seen and witnessed as all of you, not just this version of yourself that you may have created like a character to fit into corporate or to fit into this group or to fit in and belong over here, but you're deciding to unleash. You're deciding to be uninhibited. You're deciding to be the fullness of who you are and to be all of you unapologetically. These fears of public persecution can surface. These fears of being seen can surface because you're saying, you know what? I'm going to be all of me, no matter what. I remember when I was in my 20s, and at the time, there wasn't this movement inside of the Black community of having our natural hair. And I had cut my hair about this short. All of the relaxed, processed part of my hair, I had chopped it off. I was starting this healing journey at the time, and I was deciding that I wanted to be the full, authentic me, and I was going to show up to my job in my natural hair. Now, mind you, this was a time where this was not a thing. I didn't have an example of this. I didn't have a blueprint of what this would look like. I didn't have an example of seeing a woman who looked like me or similar to me and had hair like me going into a workplace where she may have been the only one who looked like that and rocking her natural hair, not trying to fit in, not trying to blend in. And so I had to lead the way and be the one. Now, it can be scary when you are not wanting to stand out like a sore thumb. It can feel scary when you don't like attention on you. It can feel scary when you have these fears of, what if I am not able to do this because they don't like it and they want to fire me for unjust causes? Our mind can come up with so many excuses and reasons of why we can't be all of who we are, that we can find ourselves talking ourselves out of the fullness of ourselves. And so being mindful and aware of, what are the thoughts that I think when these fears come up? What am I feeling in my body? And can I be with it? Can I be with that? Now, you'll hear me say this a lot inside of my work, that we have not only our lived experiences, but we also have our ancestral lineage experiences. What do I mean by that? Meaning there's a combination of your experiences that you have actually lived through in this lifetime and the ancestral lineages of your family, your bloodline, your lineage that is also within you. And what I love about modern science, specifically in the context of this conversation, epigenetics, is it is showing how much we can pass down through the cells and the tissues of our bodies, the brains. You can have a grandmother, great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, way back when, who experienced public persecution, and her daughter, your great-great-great-great-grandmother, witnessed that. And she developed a fear of public persecution. And so in her lifetime, she decided to shrink. She decided to play small. She decided to hold herself back. She decided to play safe. She decided to not really put herself out there. She decided to do what was going to help her be accepted, to people please, to not come across as too audacious or too bold or come across as too much. And then she passed that down. And then she passed that down. You see where I'm going with this? And it lands to you. And you may not have even realized that there is a generational blueprint that's been passed down to you to play small, to be nice, to shrink, to hide, to dim your light, not be too much. Don't be too much of this. Don't be too much of that. That you don't even realize that you're not just dealing with fears of your own lived experience, but you're also dealing with the fears of your ancestors, which is why I love the work that I do so much, because we address that. Now, before I get to that part, I want to talk about this concept of the coming up with this concept of the ancestral lineage, because this persecution wound does come from very real experiences that have happened specifically for women, where many, many years ago, at the onset of patriarchy and capitalism and liberalism and all these isms, these systems of oppression that were created to keep certain groups of people disenfranchised or oppressed so that other groups of people could stay in power. During those times, there were a lot of public persecutions that happened. There were persecutions that happened with women where they were harmed, murdered. They were excommunicated from communities and groups. And we needed each other to survive. To be excommunicated or to be kicked out of a group or ostracized was a threat to survival as a woman. And so it wasn't so much about being accepted for ego's sake or being accepted to get along with a group of women, but there was a time where we actually needed each other to survive. And so it creates a very real, somatic, cellular fear within you of survival. And when these fears of being seen surface, we're now not just talking about maybe as a little girl you experienced being bullied or picked on at school and you didn't fit in and you didn't belong, or maybe you came from a family like myself where you were the black sheep, or you didn't fit in with your family, or you often felt misunderstood. And then you go out into the world and you carry that blueprint with you. It's not even just your own lived experience, but now we're talking about a collection of experiences that have been passed down through lineages where this fear of being seen is very real. It's a visceral fear within you. It feels like a threat to your survival, literally. And so if you've been feeling this fear of being seen and you're trying to talk yourself out of it being ridiculous, unreasonable, just push it away and move on. Just shove it down somewhere and show up. I invite you to shift your approach, because it's going to keep resurfacing if you try to suppress it or numb it or avoid it or tuck it away over here, put it in a closet over there somewhere. It's still going to show up. Because it's in you, in your body, in your cells, in your tissues, in your organs, in your unconscious neural pathways. It's in you. And so when we're looking at this concept of this ancestral aspect of, wow, many years ago, there were women who were murdered, who were publicly persecuted, who were ostracized, excommunicated from communities because of who they were. It does create a very real fear that it will happen to me. So your fear is not unreasonable. Your fear is not unjustified. Your fear is valid, but you don't have to live there. You do not have to live there. And so there's two different approaches that we want to take when we're looking at, well, how do I overcome this fear of being seen? Because I have this mission and I have this vision and I have a next level that I have to get to. How do I get there? Well, before I share these two ways, I want to take a moment to share about what my journey looked like, because I believe it's imperative to know that I'm not just someone who's speaking to you from my intellect. I'm not just someone who's speaking to you because I have credentials. I do have credentials. I'm not just someone who's speaking to you because I have a professional background. I do have a professional background and an education. I'm speaking to you from someone with embodied, lived experience. I grew up in an environment where I was literally beaten and abused in front of my family by my father because I was outspoken against his abuse, against his addiction, against his violence, against his rage, against his anger. As a little girl, I used to speak out against it and tell him that that's not right. Begging my mom to choose herself, 4 years old, marching around the house, telling my mom, you're worthy. Why don't you choose yourself? And look who I am now. Look what I'm doing. You can't can't tell me I didn't know who I was when I came to this planet, okay? Marching around the house telling her, choose yourself, value yourself, know your worth. 4 years old. How did I know to say that? How did I know this stuff? Because it was who I am. It was who I am, but there was a system of oppression in place in my home of patriarchy. Someone who was living in his own state of fear used power and control and abuse and anger and violence to try to control everyone. And over time, that left an impact on me. And that impact started to show up later on. There were times I remember I was a competitive track and field athlete. I even ran Division I track and field before I got pregnant with my son in college. And the bigger the stage got, the fear of being seen showed up. I remember when I would compete and I'd go to the Junior Olympic track and field meets in the summertime. And these were the biggest meets I had ever seen in my life. People from all over the country are at these meets. It's the biggest stage for me. And I had this fear of being seen. Now, back then, I didn't know what that was. I just knew I had this fear of people seeing me be great. There were times when I said yes to my calling and I decided to put myself out there. And I remember back in 2015 or so, I started a blog. And at the time I was really deep talking about trauma. This is before it was even popular. I'm talking about trauma, trying to inform and educate people to not just do mindset work, not just do personal growth and development work, not just try to co-create everything you've ever wanted, but don't bypass your traumas. And I was writing a blog back then about this. And that fear of being seen showed up. And then a year later, I decided to self-publish a trauma memoir and put my story out there and show people who had experienced different types of traumas that your story doesn't end there. And I was invited to be the front cover of a magazine. My entire body on the front cover of a magazine with pages of my story and images of me in there. And that fear of being seen showed up big time. I was invited to be on different media platforms, the news, NPR. That fear of being seen showed up. I was invited to speak on stages in front of hundreds of people as a keynote speaker, and that fear of being seen showed up. I was invited to speak on the same panel as well-known actors and people who work in Hollywood on the set and people who are well-known in that industry. That fear of being seen showed up. But because I have a somatic alchemy process that I have been able to lead myself through, it has never stopped me. When I decided I wanted to start doing video and have conversations with people so that you could see there's a real human behind the keyboard who writes these beautiful posts. If you're not connected to me on Facebook, make sure you connect to me there because I like to write. And I decided that my voice needed to be heard. Now we'll talk about voice and feminine leadership another day because that's a whole nother conversation too. But this fear of being seen showed up. Now, what I didn't know at the time was that it wasn't just my lived experiences from childhood of being publicly persecuted in my home, being abused in front of my little sisters and my mom, and no one fighting against my dad, no one saying anything because they were so afraid of him. And so they just had to watch. And I did a lot of that work around that. But what I didn't realize was there was another layer, and it was this ancestral lineage. And it wasn't until I added somatic alchemy into my process where I was able to be bold and be on the front cover of a magazine. Be bold and be on platforms like the news and NPR. Be bold and speak on stages as a keynote speaker in front of hundreds of people. Be bold and be on the same speaker panel as people who are well known and no one knows who the heck I am yet. Be bold, be bold, be bold again and again and again as me, as all of me, was because of this work that I do. And there's two approaches that I want to share with you about looking at this. And it's a soul level and it's a DNA level. Now, when we look at the soul part, this is where our identity comes from, right? And so many modern day high achieving women, accomplished spiritual women, have somewhere entangled their identities with this concept of being seen. And it keeps that fear perpetuating because there's layers to that. And so we have to unravel that. We have to untangle that. We have to look at what have been the lived experiences. But then when we look at the DNA, epigenetics is showing what I love about modern science, especially epigenetics and neurobiology. It's showing that we can heal it. This is the stuff that's talked about in the Bible where they talk about generational blessings and generational curses. Now, we've known spiritually this for eons, that we can pass down generational curses or generational blessings. But the fact that modern science is backing this up now, I think is incredible because now it's indisputable. You can't dispute this stuff. This stuff is real. You can heal on a cellular level the lineage traumas so that the people coming after you don't have to experience what you did. That fires me up. I don't know about you, but that fires me up. I get excited about that. I get excited about the fact that, and I'm a mother, my son is 21 and my bonus son is 19. I get lit up at the fact that if my son has a daughter, that she'll be able to say, because of Grandma Casandra, I don't have these fears. What? That's huge. To me, that's when we're looking at legacy building. That's when we're looking at legacy building. A lot of people talk about building a legacy. I want to build a big old business and pass down all this money. But if you're passing down these fears, worries, and doubts cellularly on a neurobiological level in their nervous system, in their unconscious beliefs, what's the legacy there? I want to pass down the both hand. I want to pass down a legacy that outlives me. Not just with the bank account balance, but what's the balance in here, in the nervous system, in the cells, in the tissues, so that the lineages, my descendants who come after me, they can say, yeah, she cleared that. She did that. This is the work I do, working with accomplished spiritual women to embody your feminine essence on a deep, deep level, deeper than you ever have before. The women that I've worked with, I was just having a conversation with someone I've worked with today, and she was talking about how my presence alone is alchemy. Before we did any of the beautiful work we do, I use so many beautiful different tools and approaches, but before we even did that, she said, Casandra, your presence alone dissolved the shame. And she's on her path to creating abundance. And we've done beautiful work together. Worked with her on all sorts of challenges she was experiencing. She met her beloved, and within 7 months, they got married. She's put herself out there and created more visibility for herself. Up-leveling as a woman, lover, and leader. That's what this work is all about. So that when her and her beloved have children, she's not passing this stuff off to them. This fear of being seen. If we're going to create a new world, if we're going to create heaven on earth in this lifetime, if we're going to be the ones leading the way, being way showers, creating a new paradigm, this is where we do it, right here. We dissolve this fear of being seen once and for all, so that generations from now are not suffering in silence from these unconscious fears of persecution. This is the work that I do. This is what we do here. If you are looking to be more deeply embodied so that you're creating everything you've ever wanted, the most fulfilling relationships, creating deeper impact without hiding in plain sight, more abundance without self-sacrificing, reach out, and I would love to share ways that I can support you in that journey. Please share this with someone that you know is a fellow ambitious, high achieving woman who would find value in this. Support her on her mission. And if you found value in this, let me know. Reach out and let me know. I love to hear your feedback and how what I'm putting out there is impacting you. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you next time. Take care now.